Good afternoon, folks. We're about ready to begin the Building a Culture of Innovative Entrepreneurship session. If you'll take your seats. And as you're doing that, my name is Denise Thomas. I'm with Big Sandy Area Development District, and I want to introduce our moderator for the session, who is Paul Wright, the Vice President of Enterprise Development at Mountain Association for Community Economic Development. Before we begin the session, I would remind you that you have comment cards, and I would encourage you to complete those and turn those in one of the stations as you leave the session. Thank you. Paul, come to the stage.
Thank you, Denise. Good afternoon. We have a wonderful panel here today to talk about building a culture of innovative entrepreneurship. And I just want to run through very quickly who we have on the panel. You've already met Denise. I'm Paul Wright with Mountain Association for Community Economic Development. We also have with us Luke Ramsey. He's the Assistant Director of the Kentucky Innovation Center in London. To his left is Laurie Daughtry, Executive Director at the Governor's School for Entrepreneurship. And then also Dr. Ben Malfris at the Space Science Center Director at Morehead State University. And then finally on the end, we have Becky Noggle, State Director at Kentucky Small Business Development Center. Our workshop objectives, and let me see if I have her clicker. There it is. Thank you, Denise. All right. What would we do without this? Okay. So our workshop objectives today is that we want to talk about demonstrations of innovation and job creation throughout East Kentucky. You'll hear about stories of the people and the programs that have impacted the culture and are creating a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship. And finally, we want to increase your awareness of the resources that are available to you as a community leader to build a culture of entrepreneurship. So our format today, each panelist will be taking 5 to 7 minutes to make a short presentation. Then we'll take questions and answers, and we have to end at the top of the hour. So let's get started. I want to start off with the SOAR work group. Denise and myself, and Jared Arnett, we were a part of the business incubation work group. And in that work group, we identified and recommended 3 areas that could be improved. One was in focusing on industry clusters throughout the region, providing the research and development that would be needed to help those clusters emerge. You see this in your handout and your packet on some of those near-term, low-hanging fruit type of strategies. And in the cluster focus, we want to target growth stage companies and those that are already among us, those small businesses that are already operating, that we might be able to help make them more innovative using incubators, accelerators, and other type of programs. And Ben's going to talk about such an accelerator in his work today. Secondly, we want to increase the awareness and access to resources for entrepreneurs, both those that are starting businesses or those that are starting their second or third business. And we've done a lot of research and listening sessions. Many of you might have been a part of that. And what we hear is that a lot of entrepreneurs don't know where to access the resources and the programs that are going to help them succeed. One of those in particular is a web portal that would help people be able to type in their zip code and identify where are the free resources available. You're going to hear today from Becky Noggle. We've already got some early successes in this strategy. And then the third area is to promote and celebrate risk-taking and innovation. And we know that there is a fear factor, if you will, in starting a new enterprise. There's a cultural norm that in our communities that tell us, failure is not a good thing. You don't want everybody to know when you've not succeeded. And so we see that there are different strategies that we can do together to overcome this. I just want to set the stage. A lot of times when we talk about entrepreneurship, people oftentimes get hung up on, are you talking about a brand new startup business, or are you talking about an existing business that has 50 or more employees? Well, this is a excerpt from the Kaufman Fast Track course that MACIT offers to entrepreneurs. And I just want you to see that there's a life cycle and a stage of growth for every business, from the startup stage through early stage, growth phase, rapid growth, all the way to maturity and innovation. And I just want to point out that what's important is that when you hear a panel, a group like us, talk about different programs and interventions, one of the things you might want to ask them is, what stage of growth is that program best matched up? So if it's a program for startup entrepreneurs, then you want to match them up with those resources. And you're going to hear today different programs for different people at different stages of growth. Sorry about that, I didn't have that up there. All right, well, let's now hear our first speaker, Luke Ramsey.
Good afternoon. I hope you all don't take offense. I'm pulling my phone out and putting it here. It's not to time things, but my wife could literally go into labor any minute now, so if my phone starts ringing, I am walking off the stage. Don't take offense, okay? That's all. All right, so my name is Luke Ramsey. I am the Assistant Director for the Kentucky Innovation Center in London, which is partnered with Kentucky Highlands Investment Corporation. We do a lot of different things, but my role in this whole working group was to help bring a part of the conversation to entrepreneurship and to start to see how exactly do the resources that are available in Eastern Kentucky get matched, just like Paul was saying. When we started this project, when we started the working group, one of the things that we said first and foremost is we've got to hear from you all. So we held several working groups, several listening sessions all around the region and really started to ask questions. We wanted to dig deep. We wanted to find out what are the issues, what are the concerns, what are the complaints, what are the opportunities that are available to us and to you all. And so you're going to hear about a lot of those today. The two that I'm going to deal with are to promote a culture of entrepreneurship. We realized that there were some real issues. There were some real issues understanding what entrepreneurism is and understanding how entrepreneurism can impact this community. The other was to celebrate innovation. It's not enough just to have entrepreneurs exist, but we need to really highlight them. And I'm going to talk about an entrepreneur in a minute. So what exactly does that mean? First, we have to show that entrepreneurism is a legitimate path to financial prosperity. When we did these listening sessions, one of the messages that came out very, very clear was that people weren't confident that entrepreneurism, this very ambiguous term people didn't really understand, how does that really translate into financial prosperity? So we need to be able to show that entrepreneurism can translate into financial prosperity. Second is we have to educate our youth at an earlier age about entrepreneurism. I got the last little bit of the last session that was in this room about youth engagement, and I love seeing all the different combinations of conversations that are happening all about entrepreneurism in different angles. Jonathan and his panel were talking about youth engagement, and we believe that very, very much. That was one of the messages that came out very clear. People don't understand entrepreneurism, so it needs to be something that we can start talking about at an earlier age. And we also have to celebrate success. As I said a minute ago, when we have successful entrepreneurs, we need to highlight them to show off what that means. There can be real wealth and real success and real prosperity for the region, not just the individual, but for the region, but we need to show that off. So I'm going to talk about the celebrate success just for a brief second, and then I'm going to go backwards. Celebrate success. We're doing that already. The Excellence in Entrepreneurship Awards is an event that happens in September in Somerset at the Center for Rural Development every year. And it's an event where we highlight some success from across the board. So we try and hit several different topics. We hit startup businesses, for-profit small businesses, not-for-profit entities, and young entrepreneurs. And I'm going to talk about a young entrepreneur in a minute. Before I do that, I want to tell you that there are cards out in the lobby, or they will be shortly, to help you remember to nominate businesses. This is something that you all have to be involved with, when we talk about celebrating entrepreneurship, it can't be something where the organizations that are directly involved with entrepreneurship are celebrating the success. You all need to be able to identify and tell us who is succeeding in your community. So I encourage you to participate in EIEA. Come to the event. It's a phenomenal event. Also, nominate the businesses in your community that fit into one of these categories. So I'm going to talk real briefly about one of the winners. Shane Hamilton. Is Shane in here? He was going to be here before we had to reschedule because of snow or something. Shane Hamilton is a young entrepreneur, a really, really young entrepreneur from this area. Shane is a guy who, once he started to look at what his future should look like, he said, I don't want to work for somebody. I want to do this on my own. And so he started to investigate a whole bunch of different options that might lead to some prosperity for himself. So he finalized on this decision to start a cleaning service. It's a home and business cleaning service called Service Maids. It's here in this part of the state, and he has done very, very well. But he didn't start out doing really, really well. He realized that there were several challenges. I spent quite a bit of time talking to him, trying to prepare this presentation, and I love this quote by him. He said, I spent a ridiculous number of hours looking up information on how to start a business. That shouldn't be the case. There are resources in this region, lots and lots of resources for people who want to start businesses. Shane didn't need to spend those ridiculous number of hours. All he needed to do was get connected with the right resource. So when he was trying to do this, that was certainly part of the challenge, but he had several challenges. One was access to capital. He's a client of Mason's. He came to Mason looking for money. That was his primary goal. And most business owners, if you talk to them, that will be one of their first concerns is, I don't have the money to get this thing started. So how do you do that? There's several organizations. Kentucky Highlands is one of them. Mason's one of them. SCED is one of them. There's several organizations that are focused on helping fund startup businesses.
1 minute, Luke.
Sure. Oh, I got to talk fast. He needed access to training. He realized that he did not have the knowledge and the know-how to do a new business. So finding that sort of training. He also needed the help of other entrepreneurs. There's nothing that'll keep you up at night than knowing that your decisions are what will prevent bankroll and payroll from happening. He needed that support to help him weather that storm. And of course to customers. We all know that one. He also had the challenge of facing the issues that he was not aware of. He needed access to services. There was a lot of things that he did not realize that he could grab a hold of had he just known where to look. And that's one of the things that Paul was talking about, KY Biz Info, helping you as an entrepreneur connect with the services available. He needed to know the pitfalls, and he needed access to other entrepreneurs. So I want to leave you with this. I don't want Shane to be unique. I love Shane. Shane's a phenomenal story, but I do not want his story to be the legacy. He did a fantastic job. In year 1, he had 2 employees. In year 2, he had 8 full-time employees. That is creating wealth. That is creating jobs. That is a story worth telling, but I don't want Shane's story to be unique.
All right.
So I'm going to hand it over to Lori Doherty.
They're keeping us moving on today. So I'm very honored to be here to talk to you about the Governor's School for Entrepreneurs. And some of you may be wondering, what is the Governor's School for Entrepreneurs? We are a relatively new program. We're heading into our 3rd summer. We hold our session on the campus of Georgetown College. And GSE is a summer opportunity for high school students. And when these students are at GSE, they're working in teams, in business teams. And they're developing their ideas for products and services, designing a prototype of that product, and discovering their business model. And I use the word discover because it's a process that they learn to go through on how do you start a business, who is your customer, and they're putting all of this information, they're figuring out their market, and putting it all together into a business presentation that they give on the last day. So this experience is really having a tremendous impact on our students. One of our students from last summer told us they learned the basics of starting a business. They learned to be confident, to give a presentation, to be a good speaker, and to be amazing. And that's a consistent theme that we're hearing from our students. GSE builds their confidence so that they see their own strengths and then feel empowered and motivated to pursue their ideas in ways that they may not have felt that they could have done otherwise before coming to GSE. So then they return home from GSE with the tools for how to start a business. They learn how to assess their ideas and whether their ideas would make a viable business opportunity. They're learning these business smarts, but also because they're away from home for 3 weeks, they're learning some life skills as well, things like how to do laundry. And one of the more important things they figure out is that sleep really is important. But I'd like for you to hear from our students. So I have a video here of a team from last summer. And this is our top placing team right after they gave their final presentation. And they were asked to share what some of the key takeaways from GSE were.
You really need to be aware of the reality of your financial data.
And it took a lot of work and a lot of revamps and changes. I didn't think they'd be that happy. Developing a business is a lot harder than you think it would be. And there is a lot of pivoting and changing along the way, no matter whether you want to or not.
But you're never going to give it up. You can't give it up.
And there are so many moving parts that you have to be aware of, and sometimes they're not all going to work together, and you have to be willing to let that go and pivot and take a different business avenue.
Always be open-minded for sure.
Listen to people that are smarter than you.
I love that end comment, listen to people that are smarter than you. But they really hit on some key things for success that every entrepreneur needs to know, right? Listen to your customer when you need to. Work hard, know your financial data, always know what your financial position is. And although they didn't say it, I think it's clear from the video, be a strong team. And as a business owner, hire a strong team. So I'd like to tell you about some of your students here from the SOAR region. So far, in our first 2 summers, we've had 23% of our class have been from Appalachia. These students were spread out across 16 teams, and 4 out of our 5 top placing teams last summer had a student from Appalachia on the team. These are pictures of 3 of those teams. The team of the 3 girls, they were developing a product that was an earring accessory for people who have nickel sensitivities. And they won a cash award from the Lexington Venture Club. The team in the middle was developing a very stylish carrying case that would wirelessly charge your mobile devices. It would charge up to 2 devices at the same time. And they also won a cash award from the Lexington Venture Club. And the third team was developing an app that would help you to compare shoe sizes across brands when you're ordering online. So anyone ordering shoes online knows that it can be a problem to try to figure out which size you should wear depending on the brand of the shoe. So these are all very cool and very innovative product ideas that are relevant to the 21st century economy. And each one of these could be produced right here in Appalachia. Now for this coming summer of 2015, we had 26 applications from students in the region. 16 students will be attending GSE this summer. But really, that's not enough. So, from time to time at GSE, we throw out a challenge to our students. And I have a challenge for you today. And that challenge is that we would like to see at least a minimum of 1 application from every county in the region. All right, and there are, I think, approximately 93 high schools in the region. So we'd like to see at least 1 from per county, which is about 54 counties. So this is really an achievable challenge. And here's why. Aside from the fact that this is just an excellent opportunity for these students, when our GSE entrepreneurs return home, they are really revved up and they feel empowered. Remember what the one student said? They feel amazing and they feel confident. And it's a perfect time for their communities to get them involved on projects and initiatives, right? Get them, seek their input, and give them that opportunity to make a difference in their community for the future of their community. So maybe that's really a two-part challenge. First part is send them to GSE, and then get them engaged when they come back home. Here's our contact information, our social media information. We keep all of our data updated, so our application dates, all that information is kept current on our website, so that you can follow us and find out those dates and other information. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie, and thank you all for the opportunity to speak with you for a few minutes about what I believe Governor Beshear referred to as one of the silver bullets this morning, which is the aerospace economy and entrepreneurship that's related to aerospace in Kentucky. It's not well known, although I'm happy to report that it's becoming more well known, that aerospace is critical to the U.S. economy and now extremely important to the Kentucky economy. By many accounts, aerospace accounts for about 15% of the U.S. GDP, which is incredible. 15% of the U.S. economy is related in one way or another to aerospace. And as you heard Jen Carter speak earlier this morning, Kentucky's #1 manufactured export is no longer automotive. It's not even bourbon. In 2013, it became aerospace. So in 2013, it was a $5 billion economy. Now it is more like an $8 billion export economy in Kentucky. So aerospace really covers the spectrum, everything from really large airplanes and aircraft and really tiny satellites. And we do both in Kentucky. We don't actually build the aircraft, but we build turbine blades for the aircraft. We build the satellite systems. We build engine parts for aircraft. So we pretty much cover the entire spectrum. But today I'm going to focus a little bit on our specialization, which is the small satellite technology area. A few amazing facts about the aerospace industry in Kentucky. And by the way, these are borrowed from Brad Thomas from the East Kentucky Powers. Brad here? Brad was here earlier today. I wanted to point Brad out. I guess he's in another session because he is one of the leading experts on the aerospace economy in Kentucky. He's one of our biggest proponents, but over a $7 billion industry in 2014 and pushing $8 billion in manufactured exports in 2015. And Kentucky, believe it or not, now is the #3 state, ranking 3rd in aerospace exports, behind Washington and California and Kentucky. So we're in pretty good company there. But this breaks down the aerospace exports in Kentucky. You can see aerospace in 2014 was, again, pushing $8 billion. Motor vehicle manufacturing still strong at $6 billion. Industrial machinery, electric and electronics and plastics are still important aspects of the Commonwealth economy. But aerospace has overtaken those different areas. So I want to just take a few minutes and talk about our role and our expertise at Morehead State and Kentucky Space in nanosatellite technologies. We like to say that the next big thing is small. We focus on nanosatellite technologies. And when you think of satellites, you think of satellites maybe something the size of a school bus. But with the advent of microelectronics, I mean, look at the technology that's in your cell phone now. I always tell my students that, you know, when I was their age, the cell phone that I had, it actually did one thing. You could make a phone call with it. And they look at me with disbelief, but that's it's a different world now. But owing to MEMS devices and microelectronics, you can do incredible things with tiny little packages. And so let me show you how big these satellites are. Laurie, if you would hold one up, please. Here's a live satellite, CXBN2. That is literally a live functional satellite. Please don't drop it. It's about $1 million worth of satellite. I always say that after I have somebody pick it up. But you can do incredible things in tiny little packages now. So what do you do with these little satellites? Well, at only $1 million, they're incredibly inexpensive. I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, but a big telecommunications satellite would be $300 million. GPS satellite might be $500 million. So we can build 100 of them for what you could build a traditional monolithic satellite for. So we can fly them in constellations, and they can't solve all the problems of big monolithic satellites, but they're actually better at certain things. So for example, if you want better spatial coverage, a small company that's building these things that have 100 of them can have one overhead any point in the earth in 15 minutes and get relatively low resolution images, but imagery good enough to help support disaster relief, to help with disaster mitigation, to help with Earth remote sensing for resource utilization and resource monitoring. So there are an incredible amount of applications for these little satellites and constellations. They're used for everything. In fact, you probably used one this morning before you came here. They're used for data transfer, for telephony, for the internet. When you go and put your credit card in the gas pump, part of the transaction of data actually takes place over the space segment. If you look at a gas station, even in rural eastern Kentucky, a little half-meter dish there, they're not watching HBO in there. They're transmitting data to a satellite and then to your bank to take your money out. So they're used for national defense, for tactical security, for everything. We have an important opportunity, in my opinion, in eastern Kentucky in particular. I think there are implications for the aerospace industry and how it's grown. Eastern Kentucky is poised to be a major player in the space segment of the aerospace industry. And we have so much in place now. We have the pipeline that Ms. Carter talked about, starting with middle school through space prep. Then you can, if you're interested in space engineering, you can go into Space Trek. Then you can go to the Craft Academy, which has an aerospace track. And then you can do an undergraduate degree, and then you can do a master's degree at Morehead State, a master's in space systems engineering, which is, by the way, the only engineering degree in eastern Kentucky, the first and only engineering. Then you can go into the workforce. So if you're interested in the largest manufacturing segment in the Commonwealth, you can start out at middle school, and we can train you directly into the workforce all the way through. So the pipeline's incredible. We should certainly leverage the pipeline. In closing, how do we leverage the success of the aerospace industry, which is really in northern Kentucky now and central Kentucky and a little bit in eastern Kentucky, but how do we leverage the success and translate it to this part of the state? Well, we've made a few steps in the right direction. We have started a business incubator in Morehead that Jonathan Gay and the Innovation Network spoke about this morning. And we've actually had some small businesses come. We have one business that Congressman Rogers actually talked about this morning, Ragent, who's moving to Morehead to build satellite systems, radios for satellite systems. So we're making small steps. But in my opinion, the aerospace industry really became the #1 industry in Kentucky almost by accident. I mean, we don't have a big aerospace company. We don't have a Boeing or a Lockheed Martin. It's a lot of little companies that together collectively make an $8 billion industry. That's better, in my opinion, because we have a much more diverse economy in the aerospace industry. And it's a great start, but what can we do to build? Think of what we could do if we had a comprehensive strategic plan for aerospace. I mean, if it happened by accident, what could we do if we pulled together? That's where SOAR comes in, I believe. The SOAR initiative is poised to be a major player in the development of the aerospace economy in Kentucky. We're hoping that SOAR initiative, maybe we'll start a subcommittee, for example, hint, hint. You guys didn't review my slides, did you? So I can pretty much say anything I want to here. But how do we move the industry from the central and northern part of the state to this part of the state? I think we can do it, and I think we can do it with the help of SOAR. So we have an incredible opportunity here, and I hope that working together we can take advantage of it. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's 1:30 and you're still awake. You get major brownie points, so you guys are awesome. Stay awake and you'll be even more awesome. I am Becky Noggle, the Small Business Development Center State Director, and it is quite an honor to be here. We have some things that we want to share with you around access to resources for entrepreneurs, helping entrepreneurs and small business owners understand innovation and how that plays and interacts with what they do as small business owners. So you've already heard that there were a lot of SOAR listening sessions. And and I was really pleased to see in the packet this morning the report from the SOAR listening sessions that Jared included. And if you'll look on the second page, that is where the business incubation, which was where most of those listening sessions occurred. And we really did listen, and we heard over and over again that the entrepreneurs were having problems finding resources, and that other resource partners were having difficulty figuring out who to refer people to. So there were some things that we came together on and did some things really quickly for everyone's benefits. So it's an actual quick output of the SOAR listening sessions and the SOAR initiative. One of the things we did was look at collaboration and support of each other's programs for the ultimate end of supporting the entrepreneur and the business owner. We really wanted to focus on serving that business owner where they are with what needs they have and what resources are available. So we came up with some quick pilot programs. One of them was KYBiz Info. We stood it up really quickly, and we did it with financial support from the Small Business Administration. It's nothing really glitzy. It's a very simple directory of nonprofit service providers that offer services to small business owners and entrepreneurs. There's no cost to be listed as a service provider. There's no cost for the end user, the small business owner, or the entrepreneur to use it. It's really simple. There's a few guiding questions which helps the small business owner kind of categorize their thoughts and their needs, and then it kind of helps them drill down into location. It is designed to be as inclusive as possible, so we don't want to overwhelm the business owner, but we want them to know the full breadth of services that are available. Hoping that once they've identified their need or interacting with the other service providers, that we can get them to the right service at the right time, knowing that that's going to change over time. And we are really, really blessed to have a lot of very talented service providers within the state, but especially in East Kentucky. I think there are over 107 East Kentucky service providers listed in the network, and there's nearly 370 statewide listed. So sometimes we get lost at the amount of resources that we actually have available. One of the groups that is in there is Mason and Berea, and it talks about the services they deliver. So a small business owner can go in, read about the different service providers, have some choices to make about who they want to do business with, but also understanding that they have the opportunity to do business with all of them if that's what works for their business. It helps the small business service provider also get their visibility to the small business owners. None of us have the marketing budget that we would like to have to get our word out there. So this is a way that if you find that door, we can give you lots of other doors to help get your message out. So, a couple little things I want to follow up on in terms of the promote and celebrating innovation. Give you a follow-up on Shane. Shane was with us in the Capitol Rotunda last week, where he received the U.S. Small Business Administration Kentucky District Office Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award. So shout out to Shane. We also had the Home-Based Business Award, Nicole Mueller, who's out of Berea. We had the Stewart's and Stafford Tire Company here in Pikeville receive one of the Pace Setter Awards, so you'll be seeing some nice PR about them very shortly. We were very honored to have several of the Small Business Administration Advocate Awards actually nominated out of East Kentucky, so we can give a shout out to the SBDC office, Jason Rainey, for nominating 2 of those. Mike Morley also was a nominator. We had nominations from Pikeville, Middlesboro, Pineville, Ashland, Greenup, and Berea. So we had a really nice representation of East Kentucky in those award ceremonies. We also will have the Northeast East Kentucky Small Business Awards coming up May the 14th of this week, and we'll have about 350 out of that small community there recognizing small business ownership and entrepreneurship. So there's great things happening, and we'll be happy to take questions as soon as I turn it back over to Paul.
Okay, thank you, panelists. Very good information. And for those of you, if you want to queue up behind the microphones, I have some starter questions. I also just wanted to realize and recognize that I missed a slide. I talked about one slide, and there's a question coming up that might be helpful to explain that. A lot of you, how many of you have heard of this term, entrepreneurial ecosystem? You might know what an ecosystem is. It's our natural systems. You know, plants require soil, light, and water to grow. And just like a natural system, entrepreneurs and their enterprises need similar supports and nurturing and helping them grow. So this first question I'm going to put out to the panel, and I'd love for anybody else, come on up to the microphones and let's ask them. But the first one I'm going to put out to the panel here is, where does your program fit in the system or the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and what type of entrepreneurs do you most serve? Yeah, whoever wants. Whoever wants to answer that.
You want me to start with me? I'm last on the table, so I'll go first. As the Small Business Development Center, we really focus on a pretty broad spectrum of owners and entrepreneurs. We do everything from the startups to the existing business. One of the new services that we've rolled out, especially for East Kentucky with some support from USDA and SBA, is the Grow Kentucky for existing entrepreneurs. It's modeled after economic gardening. So there's a very finite suite of services that allow existing businesses to have really depth market research and market intelligence, things that they normally don't have access to as a small business owner, but collaboratively with some of our national resources, we can pull that together. So we do a lot of traditional mom and pops, but we also have small manufacturing and a pretty broad spectrum. We don't do as much startup training in terms of those types of workshops, since there are a lot of good service providers in those areas, but we do a lot of one-on-one counseling and heavy lifting in the financial analysis side.
Great. Thank you. So we're the pipeline at Morehead State University, but we really believe that universities have an obligation for economic development now. So the pipeline produces students for the workforce, graduates for the workforce, and also pre-college generates excitement among pre-college students. But we really feel like that there is a piece missing in the traditional university model, that economic development really ought to be one of the obligations of universities. And so certain disciplines lend themselves to economic development. So the R&D that we undertake in these small satellite technologies, we're trying to turn into startups, into spin-offs and that sort of thing. And so we're working very closely with Jonathan Gay, the Innovation Network, to help support the incubator, the business incubator, that will help students and graduates and folks in the community that are interested in this sort of technology to help them launch small businesses and attract other businesses. So we kind of fit in the pipeline part, but we're really now thinking more about how do we help after the students leave university.
Okay, great.
And at GSE, so we're a high school program, and we're working with high school students, and we're really about the learning process that takes place, the learning and laying that foundation for entrepreneurial thinking, giving them that confidence. Starting a company is a very daunting task, as many of you may know, and where do you begin? Right? There's so many people who have great ideas, they just don't know where to begin, how to get started. And so that's what we teach our high school students, so they have that understanding, that appreciation, and that confidence to just go out there with their ideas and try something and do it. And that's what it's about, the foundation.
Thanks.
You don't need it.
I got my own microphone. We really fall into a couple different categories. Our focus is primarily on job creation. So we look at a couple of different types of businesses, but all that fall within the high growth area, and that could be high growth in terms of job creation. So if it's a business that's going to be expanding rapidly within the region and creating jobs, we really like to help those businesses. If it's a business that could bring in wealth into the region through intellectual property or things like that, we really like to help those. So we really do. We're not focused on one particular business sector or one particular type of business, but we do really like to focus on job creation. We've got a couple different things that we have at our disposal. One is we are partnered with Kentucky Highlands. Kentucky Highlands is a lender, an economic development lender in the region, so we have a really nice relationship with them that we can utilize that financial resource. And we also have another resource who's in the room over here, a guy named Bill Shutters. Hey, Bill, wave. There you go. Good job. Bill's the director of the center that I work at, and he's a serial entrepreneur, so he really knows how to dig deep and work with businesses as they get going and also as they grow. So we've got a variety of services and fit into a couple different places within the process, but that kind of justifies us.
The Big Sandy Area Development District, as many of the other ads across the state, have revolving loan fund programs for most any type of business who is interested in expansion or starting up. And those funds are tied to job creation or retention.
Very good. Okay. Okay, next question. Again, if you have a question, please just step up to the mic and ask a question. I do have another one here. And by the way, I will say on behalf of Mesa, we are also part of the ecosystem. We have a $24 million revolving loan fund, loans from $1,000 up to $1 million, and we also have business advisory services. And so if you're interested, we have some of our folks here and some handouts over here as well. So what's the second question? What were the greatest barriers or challenges that you have found so far in serving or helping entrepreneurs in East Kentucky?
All right, I get the first challenge question. Entrepreneurship and small business ownership is not for everyone. Please don't throw stones, but it's really not. And there are times that our PR systems kind of get out of whack, and so there's sometimes helping that individual come back to get in touch with reality and what is, there probably isn't going to be 100% financing out there, and they're going to have to work really, really hard. It's not going to be an easy job, and Lori did a good job of explaining that to the governor's scholars, that working hard is a big part of it. So one is getting the reality aligned with expectations. Another one is our business owners that are working really, really hard. It's really hard for them to differentiate when it's time to work in the business and when it's time to work on the business. So how do you find the time to grow your business, get the clients you need while providing the service that you need to? And that can be a really big challenge. The other one is sometimes there's so much noise out there, just getting the attention to actually help them get the information and the messages that they need to do what they need to do can be very difficult.
So I think we have two challenges in terms of trying to answer that question. One is to spin off businesses that students and faculty and staff, graduate students might wish to start. And the other challenge to help promote economic development is to attract existing businesses or have existing businesses spin off subsidiaries in Eastern Kentucky. And they both have their challenges. I found the second to be much more difficult. Only recently have we been able to convince a company to move to Morehead, an aerospace company called Radiant Technologies, and they're starting off with 28 staff positions, so it's a small business. But they've spent about $40 million in the software development for this software-defined radio system, and they want to fly it in space on small satellites. So we had worked with a variety of different other businesses for something like 6 years before we could convince one business to move to Eastern Kentucky. And the idea was that once one moved, you start to create an environment where another might come that has a related technology. And then you might need machine shops, or then you might need fastener companies. And so what we're trying to do is build a critical mass, a nucleus, but we needed to get that one company to Morehead first. And we had, I don't know, 5 or 6 false starts over the years. So finally we have the one company. Now we have 3 that are, 2 that are spun off and 1 that's an existing company. So it was really breaking the ice and getting the very first one in the door. And once we did that, I feel like we have momentum. So it was breaking the ice, I think.
Okay. For GSE, I'm going to put this in the context of a business startup. So when I began with developing GSE, we looked at who our customer is, and our customer is the high school student. So then we looked at what our channel to our customer is, and that channel is the high schools and going through the high schools. And so that has been our biggest challenge, even though we are communicating on a fairly consistent basis with the high schools and mailing out marketing packages and trying to get our name out there and make them aware that this is now another summer opportunity for their students. Just getting through, I think a lot of the schools have a lot of things that they're dealing with, a lot of issues that they're dealing with and challenges of their own. And so getting that communication out and getting them aware of us so that they can encourage their students to apply to us, that has been one of our challenges, and that is something that we work on continuously because in many ways we are a startup ourselves.
I would say, just to summarize, one of the biggest challenges for us has been time, generically, but in 3 different ways. One is managing the expectations of the entrepreneur, somebody who comes into our doors and wants our help. They have an expectation that there's going to be immediate results, and that's sometimes challenging to accomplish. There's also the time of the entrepreneur. They are oftentimes working either in a business already and wanting to start something on the side, or as Becky said it very well, they're working so much in their business, they're not working on their business and are having a hard time finding that time. Thirdly, finding time for us to be able to make that deep dive with the business on a really frequent basis and with a lot of different companies. It takes a lot of time to work on that business, and we really want to do that, but it can be challenging to work with a lot of different companies in depth.
Some of the challenges that we see with our program in the RLF is that folks come to us not quite ready to actually pursue those loan funds. So we do refer them to our partners like MACID and the SBDCs to get them ready to be prepared to ask for funds from all of the sources that are available. Secondly, another big challenge is many of the folks that we see and come to us for funding aren't bankable, whether it be credit issues or other concerns that make them less bankable in a traditional means or even through non-traditional sources.
All right. I think we have a question here.
Yeah, from a short person. I'm especially interested in the Governor's School for Entrepreneurs. I think that's wonderful. I'll definitely let our Martin County kids know that that's a possibility. But and I was kind of wondering about if you have tried to discuss with schools the importance of this as a part of their whole program, because I know I've taught for 31 years and everything's based on Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and geometry, and there is no accounting, and there's no outlet for that economic sense that the students need on a personal level as well as a professional level to understand what does the interest rate mean and how's that going to affect my possibility of getting a loan or doing anything else. And so I've just wondered if you've discussed with schools adding this to the curriculum or with the state.
We have it on a very high level, a very broad level. One of the things that I do when I go around in the fall, I do go around and I go into schools and I talk about GSE. And when I talk about it, I talk about it in the context of their education and helping them to understand what entrepreneurship is. Some of the best students coming to GSE are students who are interested in math, interested in computer science and engineering. Entrepreneurship is definitely something that pulls together all the different disciplines and the core curriculum. And there are programs that are developing curriculum for the schools. I know that University of Kentucky is working on a curriculum and going into some of the schools with it. And it is very important, and it is something that can be taught as part of the core curriculum in every subject so that students develop an understanding of it.
Let me tag on to that, because that's, I'm glad you brought up that question. That was a concern that a lot of folks had, is that we don't understand entrepreneurship early enough. And so that is, you will be seeing that kind of bleed into earlier and earlier stages of education. With Idea State U, Jonathan mentioned Idea State U in the last session. There's also the Collegiate Business Concept Challenge, which is in the region. Those things are focused on college students and kind of exposing entrepreneurship to college students. But now we're seeing an even earlier and earlier push towards explaining entrepreneurship. I spent 6 weeks with a elementary school in London talking about entrepreneurship with sixth graders, and it was great seeing them think about business ownership. And they do think about business ownership. They don't think about going to work for somebody. They want to have their own place at some point.
Thank you for that question. We have another question.
It's not a question, it's an observation. Everybody that's going to build a business in entrepreneurship needs to understand risk.
Yes.
And if you don't teach these young people that they go to sleep with it every night, that they have to go to sleep with a pit in their stomach and understanding the risk, and a lot of them aren't prepared to do that. Mm-hmm. And they need to be taught that up front, that if they don't have the ability to understand risk, I built a business from scratch. And I can tell you, I wish I could do it all over again today with what's happening with broadband. And I'm telling you, if you don't teach these young people what's about to happen in this state, that we're increasing the speed 10 times, it's going to be half the cost, and we've got a huge opportunity to build aerospace in eastern Kentucky. We've got a huge opportunity to build a number of entrepreneurial businesses, and guess who can do that? Young people, because they understand computers, they understand coding, they're teachable, and so on. So we got huge opportunity with SOAR, but they've got to understand risk.
That's great. Thank you for that comment. Absolutely, risk-taking is part of the process. That's part of the characteristics of an entrepreneur. When you're young, you're typically putting a few dollars at risk. But what you're really putting at risk is your social capital. I would challenge every leader in this room is that what we need to do is give permission for young people to make mistakes. So we need to give them the vision, give them the equipping them with the tools, but we also need to celebrate successes, and we need to learn from those times when they didn't get it right the first time, because it's important to do that. So it's the culture of risk-taking that we need to foster more and more of, and the programmatic activity. So we have time for one last question.
I'm going to take a risk and ask a question. Thank you. One of the words, by the way, I want to thank the panel and also the people who crafted the summaries of the working groups. It was a very thoughtful document, and I appreciated reading it. But one of the questions I have, one of the words I didn't see was local. And what are we doing to build strong, resilient local economies? But the other part of that is, what are we doing to make exportable products that we can take and sell outside of Eastern Kentucky to attract that outside investment in that's going to help with this job creation and business startup process? Thank you.
I'll take a stab at export, and then we can kind of build around that. Actually, this is a wonderful time to be thinking about exporting in the state of Kentucky. They're on their second round of what's called a STEP grant. and it's the Small Business Administration, the Economic Development Cabinet, and a lot of other players have actually come together to coordinate what they're able to do with a small business owner around exporting. And if you have a product that you think might be exportable, there's wonderful resources to help you go through that readiness phase to see if it's right for your business. But there's also some really nice, rich resources to help you think about what exports are really attractive on the market in the various markets that Kentucky tends to concentrate on. So there are some really strong efforts in the state right now taking place to actually support and encourage exporting.
I think it's an important question, and in my case, it's a little bit of a setup, actually, because aerospace is the #1 manufactured export in the state now, as of 2014. The components that we build in the state typically don't stay here. I mean, they go to France. The turbine blades made by GE go to France. The direct home television half-meter dishes made by Highlands Diversified go literally all over the world. Germany's the second biggest importer. Canada, very little of it actually stays in the state. So the question for us is, I think we have it right in terms of using export as aerospace as a manufactured export. What we need to figure out is how to bring a piece of it here to eastern Kentucky. It's all over the rest of the state, but what can we do here? And we're trying to do it in bits and pieces, but we don't really have a comprehensive effort underway right now to take advantage of this #1 manufactured export. So that's why I'm here.
And I will say that at GSE, we do encourage our teams to think about business from a global perspective and to think about their ideas and how they might be creating their business model in a way that is taking into account exporting and global initiatives. We also encourage the triple bottom line, teaching not just profit, but people and planet as well. So sustainability is an important component of our curriculum as well.
Thanks for asking that question, Isaac, because perfect timing. And there was a slide that was cut off at the very end of my presentation that talked about some upcoming opportunities, one of which is Selling to the World, which is a 2-day workshop that we've been hosting for the past couple of years with the KCTCS in Middlesboro. It's a 2-day session about exporting. Selling to the world, literally, is what it's about. It's about how to take your product from here, your service from here, and how do you sell it to the world. It's focused on Southeast Kentucky, but we open it up for everybody. It's on June 25th and 26th, I believe, 24th and 25th in Middlesboro. So if you haven't heard about it yet, you'll be hearing about it shortly.
Very good. Okay, so we're going to close this out. Last thing I want to do, Denise mentioned this at the beginning, in your packet, you should have one of these cards. On one side of this card, it's about an idea or an innovation that might have sparked here today. If you'd like to write that down and put it in, I believe we're putting it in the green box over there, or turn it in at the door when you leave. And finally, there's a commitment card. If your organization or you're a leader in your community and you want to help spark innovation and entrepreneurship, I would encourage you to put down your ideas and that you want to be involved in that. And let's work together to spur innovation and entrepreneurship in our communities. And let's thank this panel.
It's nice to see you.
Sorry, I don't know how that got.